today to the latest in the Meet the Lindens talks, and I'm delighted that joining us today is Ebbe Linden, CEO of Linden Lab.
Well, hello. It's so nice to be here again. How are you doing, Saffia?
I think I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be here.
And we're joined on stage by Patch Linden, who, like yesterday, is going to be handling the question and answer phase of this talk. So if you have questions, can you pass them to Patch? Or if you can't reach Patch, can you try passing them to Dorney Davio? And she will pass them to Patch. So I'm just typing her name in chat so you can all see it. Okay, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure that people have got lots of questions to ask you. I know I've got quite a few to start us off.
Let's get to it.
So, when you came to Linden Lab, you already had more than 25 years of experience of working for companies like Microsoft and working on the Office range of products. I understand.
Yeah. I started my real career at Microsoft in the late 80s. And was there all the way through the 90s. 12 years. Wow. It was a phenomenal time and place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Before Windows, back in the DOS days, and
wow.
Joined the Office team after a couple of years before Microsoft Word 2.0 had even shipped. So and then I was there for Word 2.0, Word 6.0, Word 95, Word 97, Mac Office 98. So lots of Office and extremely successul organization and team and product. So it was a really good place to have my start and sort of software career, get off the ground.
Now you're originally from Sweden, but you've been in the States for a long time.
Yeah, born and raised in Sweden. I'm still a Swede.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here still on a green card, as long as they let me. Mm-hmm. And I came here to go to college. I was a ski racer and had injured my back, so my big aspirations about the World Cup and all that and the national team kind of fell apart. So I sort of went plan B and went to college where I could ski and study and experience the world, and landed at a really cool school in Vermont called Middlebury College,
mm-hmm.
where I studied fine art and computer science. So I spent a lot of time in the art studio and the computer lab. So sort of extreme left brain, right brain type of education.
I'm surprised you didn't end up at Adobe with that kind of input.
Well, it could have happened, but, I ended up, Adobe, I could have gone there too when I was in Seattle, but I, slipped into Microsoft kind of on a random banana peel. It wasn't really a plan. It was just, I had to do something before they kicked me out of the country because my visa was about to expire, and got a job, and, now I'm here still.
Now, you actually joined Second Life long before the possibility of becoming CEO was on the line.
Yeah, I'm good friends with my current chairman of the board. We were actually good friends back in college, and have by chance, actually, kind of shadowed each other. So he'd spent some time living near me and with me, actually, for a while when I lived in Seattle. And I lived with him a little bit when I moved to San Francisco. And now we both live in a community fairly close to each other still. And so we've known each other for a long time. And so I got exposed to Second Life quite early on by just talking to him, because it was one of his early investments as a VC.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to know Philip and my son, who happens to work at the lab here for several years now, but he's actually working on the Sansar product right now. He had really successful time in Second Life at a very young age, creating content and starting business and providing, interesting experiences for customers. And I kind of fell in love with the idea and understood what Philip and Second Life was trying to achieve. And but it wasn't until many, many, many years later, well, as of about just over 5 years ago, that it came up that they were looking for someone, and it was the right time and place for both the lab and me to hook up and see how I could help keep things going here. And so have not regretted that decision for a second. It's been absolutely fantastic. It's an incredible group of people I get to work with. Having the Second Life team is just an absolute, privilege and honor to have this team. And, many of you have interacted with or heard from or get exposed to people like Oz and Grumpity and Patch and Brett, and it's just such incredible human beings. You also got to see a little bit of April the other day. So everybody's just such incredibly passionate about the product, and so it's just an absolute joy to work with the team and trying to not just trying, but also succeeding in making Second Life better and better. And so that's just been a very, very, joyful ride for me so far.
What would you say are the aspects of the job that you love most?
Probably diversity. It's diversity in multiple axes. It's diversity in people, diversity in use cases. Kind of sounds boring, but the way people get value from Second Life is incredibly diverse. For some people, it's a means of expression. For some, it's a business. For some, it's health. For some, it's education. For some, and it's just that breadth and depth of ways that Second Life benefit people makes every day kind of a fresh new day. It's not always the same thing. So it's the complexity, which is, sometimes challenging, but the complexity of the product, because we're, a platform with tools for people to create these worlds. We're social. There's an economy. There's, all these different aspects. So there's always new and challenging and interesting topics that come up. It never feels old. There's so many still after, an incredible 16-year run. There's still so many incredible opportunities for what we can go do. So after having worked for at the Office team, or especially Microsoft Word for so many years, you reach a point like, what else can you do with a word processor? You start going like, okay, been here, done that. But this is just a subject matter that I just can't get tired of, because it's always interesting dynamics, whether there's social dynamics or technological challenges or economical challenges. Just like you always have to learn things and discover new things, and just constantly being like incredibly surprised with what people are able to do and achieve. So it's just constant surprises and discoveries and learning, and that combined with the incredible team here and the passion here at the lab, it makes it a joy.
One of the things I want to talk to you about is the economy, because it's something we've discussed before, and of course it's come up recently with the changes you've been making. And I was wondering if you wanted to say anything about that.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, as you've noticed, any world, it could be America, it could be Germany, it could be Second Life. There's always discussion about the economy, and it's always discussion about what things should cost and who should be taxed for what, and what types of things benefit what groups versus other groups, because there's no one size fits all because of the diversity of ways that people use or benefit or depend on a world like this. But what I have been saying for feels like many years now, very consistently been saying, is land in Second Life has been too expensive. And it's been a majority piece of our revenues. And to remove our dependency of that being such a majority piece of our revenue, we have to find ways to move or shift our revenue model or business model from certain ways that we can make money to other ways that we can make money. And I've also been saying for a long time that, land has been too expensive, and so I feel we've been over monetizing land ownership. And we've been under monetizing an extremely vibrant economy within the world. And so simplistically, I kind of compare it or suggest it's like we've had really high property taxes and almost a non-existent consumption tax.
Right. So
how do we get this shift to happen? I mean, we also have subscriptions or premium. That's another revenue source for us. But so we're trying to shift away from land to other areas. And, one of those is consumption. So as we lower land prices, we've been kind of at the same time bumping some fees associated with the GDP or the economic activity in the world. And meaning if you were purely a seller of goods in the world and didn't really own land, you actually had a very, very low cost of operation on the platform. But if you were a landowner, you've had a very high cost. So I can understand as we make this shift, you have people that have benefited from very low fees on transactions, feeling that things are getting worse because they're getting charged more, and people that have owned land will feel some relief because we've been moving it down, in steps, and we've had to do this carefully over time, because if you snap this change radically, then you could destroy businesses, you could take huge risks. So we've tried to figure out the right pace at which we do this rebalancing of the economy. And as you noticed, and as we communicated a while ago and kicked in gear, I think early this week with these new fee structures, that was an additional step in that direction of trying to create a more well-balanced way for us to collect revenues. And that's what's been going on. And I think it's still even after these last changes, I still think land is too expensive. And I still think that there's more opportunity for us to monetize transactions a bit more. I mean, even fully loaded, when you sell something and you sell your Lindens and you redeem your Linden dollars, it's, for real money. That's still not a huge number compared to what I would say industry standards are for fees associated with digital transactions. So that's the process that's been underway, and I understand that it makes some people unhappy, especially if you've been working, low margin and margin changes, and we'll see. I'm sure the people and the economy will adjust. People might raise some prices on goods they sell to kind of make up the difference, but it's also a bit of capitalism in here. Some people know how to succeed, and some will have a tougher time because of the content you create or the service you provide or whatever it might be. And so it might be a little bit tougher for some, but we feel it's absolutely crucial to make these adjustments, because we found out from research years ago that the number one reason people left was the cost of land. And you can kind of understand that, full region is, used to, when I first started here, was $295 a month, full retail. And that's a significant hobby. And it's hard to, make that money back. And so, and we've also, because of that, seen a lot of fascinating, absolutely beautiful and stunning content disappear because, it was too expensive for people to have it on in Second Life. So that's kind of the high level view from me on what's going on.
There has been a petition, of course, about this.
Yeah. I read that. I saw that. And I understand that anytime you make changes like this, some group are going to feel that it's negative for them or works against them, which is no different from new regulations or laws or taxes or fees or whatever that happens in the real world. If you live in California right now, you go, dang it, I used to be able to deduct more on my state income tax than against my federal taxes than before because, someone sitting somewhere made some decision. But that's how it goes. And so I can understand that it frustrated some people. But I also don't think we can have some sort of democratic process with all the stakeholders on a constant basis to make a decision that ultimately makes everybody happy. That's just not possible.
It could cause
and we do spend a huge amount of time interacting with the community and listening to feedback, gathering feedback, whether it's in forums and in product meetups and Jira, and there's so many ways that we constantly listen and understand the needs of people, but still, when we make the right decisions, it still will be perceived as negative to someone somewhere for some reason, and it's just part of business, and so that's how it is.
There is something that I was thinking of, which is, would it be possible to kind of give more preparation time to people, or would that just not work? Say 30 days before a change comes in.
Well, I forget exactly how far in advance we communicated these pricing changes, and there was even time for some people to bring up some fantastic feedback, and we listened to all of it, and it even made us react to some of the changes we proposed, and we changed some of the changes we had proposed. So you have to find sort of we also want to move quickly, right? We can't have month-long public debates
consultancy
we want to do, then it
yeah.
turns into molasses. And if anything, we're trying to figure out how to go faster, not slower in general. How often can we ship improvements? How much often can we do changes? And it's, having such a diverse set of users and customers, and it makes it difficult. And always trying to make sure that we don't break things, so that things you've relied on and purchased and used for years suddenly doesn't stop working. And so there's a lot of friction in constantly improving something like this. But it's critical for us to do that because we all want it to get better, faster, sooner. And so we have to find that balance between overanalyzing and sort of getting everybody's buy-in. That type of democratic process can you grind to a complete halt, as you see in some real governments around the world as we speak. So we have to
point. Yeah.
So but we do make sure that we stay fair, and that we do what's legally required with regards to communicating changes that impacts people's businesses and lives. So we actually spend a lot of time making sure that we give people a fair understanding of what's about to happen when it's of significant magnitude. So, yep.
And you did, of course, row back on the group's changes.
Yeah, that was one thing. That's one thing we had to. We learned some things. There were some ways that people found value in the groups that I think we came to recognize was maybe an angle we hadn't looked at it exactly that way, and so that was something we just said, what, let's not make that change, and because we learned some things in the process, and so as you see, we do listen, and we did give I think it was like 30 days heads up on these changes. So there was that's a month. That's 1/12 of a year. And when you want to run fast, I don't know how much more time than that we can sort of delay things to get things done.
So you're saying about following the roadmap on the economic changes that you've been doing. People can feel very proprietorial about Second Life and very passionate. You've got various methods of feedback. Is it worth kind of trying to find a way that is less scattergun, that might be a better funnel for getting responses?
I don't know. Well, if I don't. I'm not. I mean, well, obviously, we're happy to listen to any ways in which we can improve the gathering of information and get feedback and communicate. But there's so many. First of all, there's so many more of you than there are of us, right? We're a handful of people that can be involved in this type of communication and feedback process, right? There's even though there's like 100 people here working on Second Life, there's only so many that can go out, primarily sort of product managers and customer service that interact a lot with users and listen to feedback and spend time on forums and spend every minute we spend time talking to people, which are very valuable. We're also not at the same time doing a lot of other things, right? So we have to find a balance between how much time we can talk to the world about everything we're trying to do and spending the time actually doing it. And we already spend a large amount of time, and because the Lindens here spend a huge amount of time in the product themselves, right?
Right.
it's not like we just have people who work on this product and ship it and go home. Like, no, we have an extremely passionate group of people that spend personal time and work time. We use the product all the time. We have our meetings in Second Life. We use it all the time, and we have various meetups around a bunch of topics. If you want to get involved, go look at, I don't know if I can top of my head just tell you exactly where to go, but there are wikis where you can go find the Linden Lab official user groups. So if you want to participate in those users group, show up and get heard. There you can log issues on Jira. There's the forums that we read and participate in all the time. So there's and just meeting people and talking to people like continuously and participating as residents ourselves. I think we're actually very, 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 very in tune with what's going on and how people think about things. That still, even if that leads to the perfect decision and the perfect process for making a decision, will still upset somebody. So it's just, you can't just get 100% thumbs up on everything. It's just a way you have to get used to. So, I'm very happy with how the team listens and participates and uses Second Life and the Second Life residents to, make the best decisions possible for our users and for our business. And ultimately, those are the same thing. We can only be successful if you're all successful. And if you're all successful, we'll be successful. So we're in this together. And so participate, get heard, and trust me, we're listening. And we're taking all the feedback we get into account as we make decisions.
I have to say it has been a tremendous change under your leadership. Under previous administrators, the sighting of a Linden was kind of, you saw more unicorns than Lindens.
Yeah.
You saw more unicorns than Lindens, more unicorns in the real world than Lindens.
Well, it had taken some unfortunate turns. I can't speak to any of that, but my philosophy is transparency and interaction and communication, and and so we changed some basic strange rules that were in place here, almost 5 years ago now, to make it obvious that Lindens can participate in the world and engage with users in the world and communicate and listen and be involved at every level, up and down the organization. And that's been, I think, positive for both residents and Lindens alike, because it was not fun for Lindens to not be able to just be part of the world as they wanted to. I'm sure many of them, had alts and, did what they wanted to do anyway, but to be able to do it in an official capacity, has been very, very healthy for us as well. So those were fairly basic, simple things to put in place, and so glad that's being noticed.
I've got a couple more things that I want to talk to you about, and Patch might want to jump in on one of them, and then I'm going to start queuing up Patch to take out questions from the residents who've no doubt. Patch, have they been sending you questions? Patch is awfully silent.
No, I've gotten a ton of questions, so.
Okay, great. A couple of things. One is a sort of think point rather than necessarily a question, but it's something that someone brought up to me today. And it's something we've actually done a Designing World show on, and I wondered if the lab have any thoughts about it, and that's how sometimes creators in Second Life can pass, sometimes very unexpectedly, and sometimes their departures can be more planned, but sometimes they happen suddenly and they're quite unexplained. And I wondered if the lab had ever thought about formulating suggestions for what residents can do. It's a fairly gloomy topic, but
Yeah,
I
it's
know
also
that.
potentially
Yeah,
very.
go on.
It's also potentially a very private topic. You know,
Yeah.
what do some people? You know, how do we make assumptions on what their preference would be if?
Yeah.
So.
At the moment,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. I was going to say at the moment, I mean, it might help encouraging people to make kind of virtual wills as to what they want to happen and suggestions. I'm just thinking about this because, you know, it's an issue that has come up several times, and it can be, we see content pass from the world without kind of explanation.
Yeah, and Patch's team does a great job when we hear about someone who cannot continue to support the worlds they've made. You know, what is there a way to transition those ownership of those? You know, sometimes we've even taken them on to keep them up at our dime because people wouldn't want to see them go away, and that's you know, content and experiences. You know, you see some communities doing, you know, wonderful things when they've lost friends, someone passed or something like that. I don't know if Linden Lab really can be in the business of sorting out a way for all of these coming these goings of whether it's content or people in some more in some sort of in a helpful way. I mean, there's so many communities in so many languages. You know, it would be really hard for us to keep track of and be involved in that kind of social changes and impact that occurs. I mean, just for us to just keep this thing running and keep it safe and keep improving it and giving support to all their technical issues or whatever is have our hands absolutely stuffed to the brim with work to do every day. So I'm not sure we can take on a more social responsibility with regards to that. But again, open to suggestions if we can be helpful in some way. But I do see a lot of people and communities doing fantastic things for each other to support each other, and you know, I think if we can create an environment where people take care of each other and support each other as we see you all doing for each other, then I think we've done a lot to enable that to happen. But again, happy to hear if someone has some suggestion for how we could be more actively involved in those kinds of changes you're talking about. I can't think of anything on top of my head that would be efficient use of our time or help solve the problem in a meaningful way.
The other question that I've been asked about is people who are living in private estate communities are slightly concerned. Well, this is Second Life, some of them are very concerned. But they're concerned that the popularity of the new Linden communities that are springing up around the new Linden home might impact on their communities. The people I've heard talking about this have been in, for example, the steampunk communities, and which are very strong.
Yeah, so I think you're talking about, are we competing with our own creator, with the creators in the community, or the community organizers by creating our own sort of Linden operated world as opposed to just being a pure platform company and just leave all of that to the creators. I think it's a good thing for us to be involved in for several reasons. One, we really need to not just build a platform, but also use the platform. So some people call that eating our own dog food. So having teams here under Patch who build content and social communities and experiences teaches us a lot about how we can improve the product, not just for ourselves, but for everybody else to be able to build better experiences, better content over time. It also set some examples for what's possible when you do a significant investment that the team and Patch and his team has done to create this kind of experiences. And the positive feedback we've gotten from this has been absolutely incredible. So maybe that helps lift the bar a little bit for what does it take to create an amazing community experience. And so maybe we help push it a little bit further in what the expectations are or what is possible. There's also we also have to think a lot about how easy we can make it for an inexperienced users to get involved in Second Life. And Second Life is not an easy product for someone straight off the street to understand and how to make it work for you. You have to put some effort into Second Life becoming valuable. It's not one of those, you hop in and you click a button and poof, it all just happens. You have to invest your own time to understand how to make it work for you and be valuable to you. And so it's important also for us to lower that bar of how much you have to understand to get engaged with the product and become a retained user over time. Then maybe you find that, okay, I could easily slip into, Patch's Linden home. But then maybe after you've been here for 6 months, 9 months, 2 years, whatever you go, but look at that steampunk place. That is actually something that I find fascinating. I'll move over there. But I think we have to take sort of a responsibility in sort of the whole onboarding and ease of use of new users. And we have to do that at massive scale. It doesn't help us if we make that something convenient for 12 people per day. We need to get this to be in the thousands and ultimately millions to grow and scale the whole world of Second Life. So to do that at massive scale, where the incredible work that Brett and Darcy and the Grumpy and team are doing to bring new users to Second Life, to help them understand Second Life, to get them to retain for a longer period of time and to be engaged with the product, we have to solve that problem, because that funnel is a critical thing for us to continuously optimize. So we have to take we would not get the same retention numbers and engagement numbers if we just sent people to all the creator-made stuff. We have to take responsibility for that funnel. And but at the end of the day, we will be in aggregate making a minuscule portion of all the content in this world. And because there's so many more of you than there are of us. So hopefully people don't perceive it as competitive, but instead perceive it as us doing our job, the best job possible, to bring as many new users into the world as possible, and then every other creator will ultimately benefit from that because they can now sell more shirts and they can create more communities that are more be more interesting to our users, because we can't create steampunk and 1920s Berlin and this flavor and that flavor. Like, it's just it's just impossible for us. And so to get all that variety of experiences and styles and cultures and languages, and we can't do it all. We will do, a sort of a basic but hopefully high performing, high converting, high retention core, and then the rest of the world will benefit from that, rather than seeing it as something that is somehow a negative. So that's how I look at it.
I was actually interested by that. You're talking about the funnel and things, and yet the new Linden sorry, my cough is a bit bad. You're talking about new Linden homes, but of course they're only for premium members, and those are people who are really already very committed to Second Life. I was wondering if you could have something. Patch is probably going to tear his hair out in great chunks at this, but I was wondering if you could have something like a program where new users could have Linden homes for 30 days, and then at the end of the 30 days they basically get kicked out unless they take out a premium membership, at which point they could move to they could move to a community, they could buy mainland. No, they can't buy mainland. They could buy they could rent on a private region.
Yeah.
But or they could take premium and stay in their Linden home.
Yeah. I think that all makes sense to me. I agree completely, and I know the team is thinking about those kinds of things. How do you get someone to, call it a trial starter kit, and how can we ultimately make it easy for people to discover where could I go beyond that trial? Whether it's a Linden home or steampunk this or Bay City that or whatever, that there's possibilities for them to go where they can sample and try different communities and ultimately, hopefully, find, their preferred place to be and live for the next period of time, and find their community and find, their home. Just like, there's thoughts being discussed around that, and we're constantly testing new experiences. And is it giving people something to do? Is it giving someone a place to live? Because that's not even necessarily true that everybody's looking for a home to rent and live in. That is a subset of the users that's something that is attractive to them. For other people, it's playing games. For other people, it's listening to music. For other people, it's performing. It's a huge variety. So it's not sort of one size fits all here. And it's not necessarily an expectation that 100% of our users are going to have a home. That's one piece of what is interesting to some people. So you don't necessarily want to have a funnel where the entire purpose for everybody is to go get yourself a home. That would be counter to wishes or needs of other segments of users. So we have to find that balance of how do we find out what you want? What are you looking for? And how do we get you to what you're looking for as quickly as possible? That's the complexity of this world we have here, that there's so many options. And I've kind of likened it to a little bit like we kind of drop you off at the airport and then say, good luck. Figure out what you want in life, right? And you have to have your own motivation to spend the energy and time to go discover what is relevant to you. And that's not an easy thing to do, because people that are new to Second Life have no idea what to expect, what exists here. Why would I even assume that there are these types of communities or these types of activities or this kind of content or that kind of whatever, right? Why would I assume that exists at all? So it's not like I can start searching for it like in Google, because we all have grown up in the physical world with a lot of knowledge about what's out there, and it's basically a lookup for you to go get what you want. Whereas in this virtual world that people get sent into, like the first 3 things they see or one thing they see, that's their entire assumption of what the entire thing is. And so giving people these, and you can't blast them with, here's 100 options for you. Oh my God, people don't want choices like that. So finding that simple onboarding, but also gives them a clue that there's way more out there if you just go look, is kind of an interesting balancing act. And we're constantly testing and trying to figure out the best path to lead users through. And it's not just one path. You can have different messaging up front for certain different types of segments of users, and you set the expectations for them, and then you try to take them down a path where you deliver on that expectation, where they feel that the thing they wanted to go get, they actually do get. So it's not, again, one size fits all as far as how to drive new users into Second Life and get them to understand and stick around. So it's a complex puzzle, and the team is constantly iterating and trying different messages, different paths, different experiences, and see which ones perform well, and constantly measure and test, A/B test for what works better, this message, this experience, and we do most of it, and there's also community gateways and other ways for the community and residents to try their own flavors beyond what we're capable of, because we can't message every subject matter to every potential user and match every part of Second Life with some user. That's just too big of a puzzle. So we have to figure out on some sort of the sweet spot, and hopefully with a lot of help from you all, you will find niches and special ways of bringing in users that we can't get to in the long tail of things. So, yeah.
I'm going to throw it over to some resident questions now. So, Pat.
Yes. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
I got a good handful of them here. First one from.
I was just going to say, Ebbe, how long can you stay?
I don't know. How much energy do you guys have? we got some time. I think.
Careful now. I was here for almost three hours after on Monday.
Yeah, no, we're not going to go 3 hours. I'll take a peek at my calendar and see if I have a hard stop.
All right. So first question I've got here from Callie Klein. She was wondering why we didn't get much more notice on the cash out rates changing. It's kind of hard to plan and stuff with your business. It also kind of picks at the confidence when a pretty big change like that is made so suddenly. She wants to know what she can do to keep her confidence up, when things like this happen in the future.
Well, so first of all, like I said earlier today, that I've been saying that we're going to be doing these kinds of changes for years. This very specific change we just made, we communicated 30 days in advance. So I don't know that, we could do a whole lot more than that. Like I spoke to earlier, at some point it just becomes a massive amount of friction for us to be able to move forward and make changes that we know we have to do for this business. We know what we have to do And we're just then trying to make sure we do it in the smartest way possible. But there are certain things we just have to do. And so sometimes it's not really up for debate as to whether we can or should do this. And so we want to give people, a fair amount of time to decide whether that's something that will work for them at all. So whether they therefore decide that this is not a business that's going to be sustainable for them, they get a heads up that they can now change tracks, or are there things they have to do within Second Life, whether it's changing their business model or their pricing to absorb the changes that are happening, to make sure that they still have the margins or a business model that works for them. So I think 30 days is about right for something like this. It's basically 10% of the year right there, pretty much, when you take vacations out and everything else that's going on. So, 30 days for these types of pricing changes, I think, is a fair. But I think then also in between, we need to keep iterating what our long-term goals are, and so that people can be sort of prepared for what may come, even we don't know yet the specifics. But pricing changes, lower property taxes, higher consumption taxes, if you want to describe it that way, I think it's a very rough, it's not necessarily the correct way to describe it, but it's something we've been talking about for years, so this should not have been a surprise to anybody.
Yeah. A little bit of a follow-on question that's pretty interesting too from her was, if creators, large creators and stuff were to come up with ways to grow Second Life, do you potentially see an opportunity for some sort of incentive or, maybe a reconsideration on the higher rates, if growth was shown through, various ideas and actions taken by people?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. Like, would we change our business model if people came up with different ideas for how we could generate growth with a different business model, or is that the question?
No, potentially this is aiming back at the increased cash out fees. Would you consider an incentive that might reduce the cash out fees for certain creators if they came up with a Second Life growth plan that actually, took footing and grew Second Life in some meaningful way?
I don't know. I don't know. If someone has an idea for how we should grow Second Life and you haven't told us about it, like, damn, what the hell? Like, tell us. We were all ears for any ideas that would help us grow Second Life, because that's going to benefit all of us. And so please share those magic ideas for how this growth can happen. Are there certain growth trajectories or scale at which our revenue model could change in accordance with that? Of course, that's possible. Maybe with more users, we could operate at a thinner margin and still make it a very, very viable business. And that would be great for everybody. I think smaller businesses probably have to have higher margins to make it viable. And, Amazon has a business model of like minuscule margin and make it up in volume. And so, I'm all cool with that too. And then which is kind of separate from which part of the business do we collect money from, and what types of users or what scenarios do we get our revenues from, and making sure that's a good balance with what gives opportunities for creators. Because if opportunities are not there for creators, then the content doesn't get created, and if there's no content created, then this whole thing falls on its face. So we have to make sure that we're in good balance between what works for us and what works for the community at large. But yeah, right. First of all, please, if you have ideas for how we can grow or what you can do to accelerate growth, please let us know.
Yep, certainly. And I was going to just dovetail onto that, and certainly if people do have ideas and stuff like that, I'm all ears. You know how to get a hold of me. Most of you do. And I listen to these ideas all the time.
What I was going to say is, why not have a Linden Economics Prize and get residents to actually send in ideas in order to win a prize?
Yeah, I know we have special sort of groups and forums or where we interact a lot of people with kind of maybe more technical productive things, but maybe there's a reason to talk more about, have groups or some sort of process where we talk more about user acquisition, retention, economics in general. But I have to make sure that the people here that spend energy on that would have time and energy to really engage with that in a more formal way. It's a really complex topic. So, it's something we've been doing for a long time. So, even people that want to contribute to that dialogue would have to invest a lot of time and energy, because just us having the same conversation with people over and over and over is not necessarily the best of our time either. So,
yeah.
It's not something that it'd be rare for someone to just have some magic ideas that we haven't heard or seen already on this topic. And if we engage with people, we might be spending a huge amount of our time just educating people on what has been tried or what worked, what doesn't work, and why that could, rather than actually, moving forward. So it would be a fairly substantial commitment for anyone who wants to help push that forward. So I'm just saying you're signing up for something if you really want to help us out, not just throwing out ideas, because we have a million of those. We've been through a lot of them as well. So it's not easy. If you want to help us there, you really roll up your sleeves.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you would have done it if it was easy.
And we probably have done it. So.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So one more kind of economy-related question. If Vic basically asks and says that if he understands correctly, the cash-out fees are a path that we all go down together, right? Where do you think you see the final step? Is there some percentage ceiling, like 20 or 30% at some point someday? And then, when you hit that ceiling, is land going to be like zero? Or, what are your thoughts on what that future might look like?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to go to zero for land. And it's not like we're going to just flip it from one side to the other side of that equation. It's a matter of finding a balance. And I don't know when we believe we've achieved sort of optimum balance. And then, it could be that, if you reach a certain balance and also some meaningful changes in the cost basis of all this stuff, where you start looking at how can we lower prices overall, basically the Linden Lab margins on the business, because it actually generates growth, and we make it up in volume what we don't get on margin. So I think that's really hard to predict. I think we want to be very careful. I think we want to do it by step, and we also want to try and keep it simple. I mean, we've discussed, should there be fees on transactions? My God, the different types of transactions. What about gifting? What about skill gaming? What about, purchasing certain types of content? Or what about services? And what about, you don't want to end up with something like, the U.S. tax code here. That would be just insane, right? So how do you keep it simple, understandable, to operate and understand, where also when you start having variations and flavors, then people find all kinds of ways to sort of get around it, and now you start incenting a lot of strange behavior. So keeping it simple, keeping it fair, I would say for some users, the business model we've had has been unfair for some users and really, really attractive for other users. And so how do we find the right balance where the value that people get out of the product is sort of the cost of that value is reasonably evenly distributed, I think is something we're still moving towards, because I think it's been out of whack. And I don't know exactly what that is. But, so when I say that sort of digital goods transactions on planet Earth tend to be in the 30% and higher, look what we have to pay distribution of digital to Steam for Sansar, or what we have to pay Apple for distribution of our content on their platform. There's 30%. Or lots of these types of digital marketplaces, they're varying rates. You have 70% in some goes to the house, 30 in some other places. We're way below that. And I want to stay below that. Because I think we add too much friction to this micro economy and transactions. It just potentially doesn't become worthwhile for people to invest their time and energy in creating this content and selling it and making it worth their time. So I think we have to be careful to not, stop creativity and people being able to profit from their creativity. And so, but at the same time, we have to pay for all these people making the service better, for hosting all these servers and doing all the engineering we're doing, and also make a profit. We're not a non-profit. We are a for-profit company. So we have to find the right balance, how much we can make, how much you can make, and have it all go around. And ultimately find that sweet spot where people are incented to create content, people are incented to buy content, and whatever that content is, whether it's a service or a shirt or a house or whatever it might be. So I think we're still looking for the ideal balance, and I think with this last step we took, I think we're getting more balanced, but I'm not sure we're appropriately balanced yet. We'll have to let this run for a while and see how it settles and learn from it and then decide next steps from there. We have no specific next steps planned, but I would like to see land getting cheaper. And at what point do we lower price of land to the point where people we make it up in volume somehow? And then it's like maybe it's better to sell land, full region for $100 instead of 200 and what is it now? $245. Because we would sell so much more of it, and that creates economic stimulus for all the other things people do because they need to fill that land. Houses and chairs and trees and more people. So now they want to buy shirts and hair. And what is that perfect model for growth? And so it's a combination of getting the right economic model and also a combination of ease of use and easy way for new users to join this world and be successful in this world. So continuous improvement and learnings and iteration go. I can't really speak to a specific max or min number of certain percentages and whatnot.
There's a very lively discussion going on among the audience with a rather creative idea for raising money, which is that you should impose a tax on ban lines.
I don't know what that would do for us. I'm sure we could do some math on how many band lines are there and how many people would be willing to pay for it, and maybe that's $50. I don't know. Or maybe it's. It doesn't smell like millions to me, but we'll. So, and that's part of how we think about premium and what benefits should people get for free, what benefits should people have to pay for. That's an interesting process as well. I know we're working on a new lineup of our premium offering, and what prices for what features and benefits do you get at the different levels, whatever you call them, bronze, silver, gold, whatever we decide. But finding that sweet spot so that people get the value they think is worthwhile, and that enough people convert to adopt certain premium levels. But I don't know if we want to have too many sort of random a la carte fees sprinkled about, because that just adds complexity.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Patch, do you have another question?
We sure do. So, this is kind of a fun one. I'm going to pair these up. One's from Anna and one's from Phoenix. You've been on record at previous SLBs stating that you don't have a bear. Have you fixed that yet? And do bear requests count as valid questions?
I do not. And I don't know what it will take. After 5 years, I still haven't done it, so maybe I'm hopeless on the bear front. I don't know what incentives it would take for me to make that happen. Maybe someone can think of an incentive that would make that happen. I don't know. So yeah, that one is still a question mark.
Well, we'll have to try to get you fixed up with that.
Okay.
Here's another one from Bath Tech. What would you recommend people study or do if they would like to work for Linden Lab?
Wow. Well, first of all, I recommend you study and do what you're passionate about. I think that's probably the most ideal path forward for anybody. Well, we do a lot of different things here. From Patch's team has customer service to help people their issues and help them become successful. He has a large group of people that work on with moles and others to create from Linden homes to landing spots to welcome areas to social islands and all kinds of in between. So it's kind of it's helped. Well, first of all, a lot of Lindens used to be residents. So being very passionate about Second Life, understanding Second Life and how to be successful in Second Life obviously has converted a number of residents to full-time Lindens. So it certainly doesn't hurt you to be a very strong and successful somebody in the context of Second Life. But yeah, if you want to be an engineer, you got to know your coding. So there's product managers, marketing managers, engineers, QA, quality assurance, customer service, So it's kind of software company type of stuff. We're a software company, and like most software companies, they require all that types of skills. And so if you have passion for Second Life, you're successful in Second Life, you are a positive and optimistic person, and you have skills in those kinds of areas, and we happen to have job openings, we post them, so keep an eye on those. Then, apply, and best of luck.
You certainly, someone just asked in chat, do we have to live in Seattle or San Francisco to be a Linden or a mole? And the answer is, I can say no.
That's right. Second Life team is very distributed. We are obviously working on a product that is virtual, and it doesn't have physical geography. And we use Second Life and a lot of other tools to be a very highly distributed and highly effective team, We have people all over the U.S. We have very, very, very few, and only in special cases, people outside the U.S. So if you're outside the U.S., its chances are fairly slim because it just creates a lot of extra HR and complexities to deal with other jurisdictions. Even some states in the U.S. are more complicated than other states. We don't necessarily have an easy way of having full-time people in all states in the U.S. But no, some roles might be more dependent on specific geographies, but most actually do not. So we have offices in Boston, Seattle, San Francisco, Virginia, where we have, decent-sized clusters of employees in offices, but Second Life people are, and Atlanta as well, where Patch is.
Yep, we just talked about that on Monday, in fact.
Yeah, so we're geographically distributed both with our offices and then a lot of people working from what we call the Moon Lab, which is wherever you are. We have us, in New Hampshire, and we have Brett up in Washington, and so we're in all corners of we're Boston, Washington, California, Florida, Atlanta. We're all over the place, and we don't mind that at all. We're so used to working in a distributed fashion. We just hired another QA person. He just accepted our offer today, and he's out of Florida. Works for us.
Land of the mouse.
Yep.
And and that applies to the lab people, but the moles come from right across the world, don't they?
Yes, they do. We have a little more flexibility with the moles because they're freelance contractors.
Yeah, not full-time.
Yeah.
Different HR requirements.
Yep. Ready for another?
Yeah.
I've got a good one from somebody that I actually work with very closely, Stingray Raymaker, with the American Cancer Society. Thank you for all you do to support us and other nonprofit missions in the virtual world. Sometimes we get questions about whether the dollars raised through our events are reaching the American Cancer Society. We do as much as we can to educate our volunteers and supporters of the process. Have you given any thought to how Linden Lab might be able to publicly legitimize the verified nonprofit organizations and events in Second Life?
Wow. I mean, I would love to do whatever we can to help in that area. I think Brett would be the right person to figure out how to communicate that legitimatization that you're asking for. I mean, I've always thought it as legit. So if it sounds like there's people that suspect that it's not legit, or is it just awareness he's asking for? So, but obviously we are very, very excited and motivated to support fundraising and nonprofits, from special pricing, from special support, from special marketing help we can do to give success to these organizations and people that manage to bring so much positive good to the world. So I don't know exactly what we can do more, but Brett would be a perfect person to talk to about how and what else we could possibly do to make these organizations even more successful, because they're awesome.
Yes, indeed. All right. Ready for more?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Got a question here from Evangeline. Where do you imagine or would like to see SL in 10 years' time with technological advances or other factors? And there's kind of a part 2 to this. And how is Linden Lab planning to keep Second Life moving with the times technologically so that the world continues to attract new generations of users in the future who may have different expectations to those in world currently?
Yeah, Wow. Yeah, that's a race. And, maybe Sanser comes up later in this conversation about how we're also taking a stab at a completely different, start from scratch approach to tackle some of the things that are new in the world, like virtual reality hardware and stuff like that. That would be, some of those things would be an extreme challenge for Second Life, of how it was designed and where its value sits for the users, and try and shoehorn that into some new technologies just doesn't fit. But we're always investing, and it's a huge product with like so many features and functionality. I'm in awe over how many products we are within this world. We're a bit of PayPal, we're a bit of Blender, we're a bit of Unity, we're a bit of messaging products, we're a bit of so all these systems make it like we're not necessarily the absolute best in any one of those. You could argue Unity is a better engine. You could argue that PayPal is a better way to move money around the world. You can argue, but it's the combination of these things that make it a fully functional virtual world, and kind of need all of these pieces to make a fully functional world. So it's difficult to sort of be best in everything, and so I think it's what we're trying to be is the best of combination of. But we're obviously investing a lot. Just as an example, this whole effort to move our whole back-end infrastructure from our own proprietary hosting in a facility with our own hardware, with our own custom systems, moving all of that over to the Amazon cloud is a huge undertaking. And we're not just doing that because we have to. We're doing that because we want to be able to offer better services with more scale, with more performance, all kinds of new, interesting possibilities down the road. And so we're investing heavily for the long term in Second Life. And the cloud work we're doing is just one of those. I'm sure over the last couple of days you've also heard from Awesome Patch about other cool things coming down the pipe in making it a more attractive product, whether it's the work we're doing with avatars and Bakes on Mesh and EAP and all these projects. So there's constant juggling of inserting new capabilities and new features. Ultimately also, what about other platforms? People expect things like Second Life to be on mobile devices. So we're starting, with a mobile companion type Second Life, so that you can be connected to your community while on the go with your phone or iPad or whatever you have. And so that work is underway. It's not going to necessarily be, a full 3D world on your phone, but at least you can stay connected with your groups and shopping and managing your business. I'm not sure exactly what features we'll have in the first versions, but so that you can sort of be in the world on your PC or your Mac, and then at least when you're away with your phone, you can still be connected to the world and the community and your friends and or customers. And over time, at some point, streaming solutions that we've had before, so that you can get the full fidelity of Second Life mobile devices will make sense. We've experimented with that through partnerships in the past, and once the pricing model of cloud GPUs come down, it'll make it easier, because it's not easy to sort of render the complexity of Second Life with the sort of size of concurrency that we support. Shoving that into a phone and the horsepower you have in it is kind of a super daunting task. So we might have to rely on cloud GPUs for that. It's just that they've been extremely expensive, and we could offer that as a subscription product, but we haven't decided to go there yet because there's still, thankfully there's lots of good competition between Google and Microsoft and Amazon on that front, so that we'll be able to get to a point where that makes sense to offer that type of a product. And so, yeah, how much better can the world work? How much faster can the world work? So constantly working on performance, ease of use. There's so many areas to tackle to make it a more broadly appealing product than it is today. We're tackling it from lots of fronts all at once. So, if anyone have ideas for what we can do to be more attractive to a different type of audience or a broad audience, we're all ears.
I just had kind of a timely question come in that kind of segues into this pretty well. Have we thought about using Steam again or approaching Steam again for Second Life?
So it's a challenge. Steam wants 30%. Are you willing to give up 30% of what you make to pay them? Does it come from us? Does it come from you? How do we take 30% of the pie and give it to them? That's what it costs. So 30% of what? If it's a retail product that sells for $30, fine. They get their $10 and the publisher gets $20 and there you go. Well, we're free to play with an in-world economy, and what piece of that in-world economy do they want? And so we've created a business model that is not necessarily easy to just add another taker of the economy to the tune of 30%. That would be a challenge. And, some of these distribution partners, whether it's Steam or other upcoming distribution partners, they sometimes have issues with subject matter. They sometimes have issues with our economic model because we allow you to make money. You should know we've invested a huge amount of effort to, in a compliant way, enable you to cash out the kind of money you're cashing out. Last year, you all cashed out $64 million. So we're basically a money transmitter because some of you take money, put money in the system and give it to someone else and they cash it out. That is a transmission of money. And there's a huge amount of compliance and legal wrangling that has to be done. And we've now have money transmitter licensed in every state in the U.S. And that's a really arduous, long, hard process to have all the KYC and AML and OFAC and all these processes that it takes to be a legal money transmitter. And even though we have all of these licenses and we're fully legit in how we do this, some of these distribution partners still get heartburn over this because they try and figure out what liability are they taking on with how money moves between users. And sometimes they think it's anti-competitive with it. So it's never an easy thing to just say, oh, let's just put it on Steam because it severely changes potentially product offering and the business model that you can have. And some of those things are quite set in Second Life. So if you guys thought, tweaking the cash out rate was kind of a extreme, then, if you want to distribute on Steam, then, some much more extreme things would have to happen. So it's currently not in our plans.
Okay, Patch, I think we've got time for maybe 1-2 more questions.
Yeah, maybe 1 to 2 more. I've got maybe one that's a little longer. Skylar asks, or says, since Second Life has been around since 1999, basically, many virtual worlds, such as there.com, have struggled to stay alive, especially after the Depression of 2008. What made Second Life stay afloat and still able to earn revenue, as well as to be able to continue to grow? And also, what suggestions do you have for other virtual world starters or current virtual worlds to be able to achieve the success that Second Life is at?
Oh, don't tell them. Don't tell them.
Like I'm supposed to give away the secret sauce? I think it's a bit of magic. It's kind of, sometimes it's timing and a combination of magic ingredients that make it all work. And it's not easy to just get that magic but better. because sometimes if you try and make it better, you make it different, and that removes some of the magic. I think it's a combination of timing and magic and the degree of freedom that we have allowed or enabled. That's, probably, I think, for a lot of companies quite uncomfortable. And companies tend to, for various reasons, to reduce risk or reduce exposure or reduce legal issues or whatever, tend to want to have more control. And I think we've been brave enough over the years to allow for a lot of, us not having excessive control over what you can all do. And so that sort of level of freedom, I think, is unique. And then there's some unique combination of freedom of expression, the economy, social. And I'm not sure that it would be as easy to do. Actually, I'm pretty certain. Also, when Second Life came about and when it got traction, there were fewer alternatives on the market. Today, it's very, very crowded for ways for entertain themselves on their PCs and have social experiences. Whether it's Minecraft or Roblox or Fortnite or all these things that people do. So it's a much more crowded field today. And that was even Second Life invented in a lot of interesting ways. Social, you didn't have Facebook back then. You didn't have, so it was early and brave. So we got to thank Philip and a bunch of people who are here early on. Some are still here. For making some really ballsy, tough decisions back then that were not necessarily comfortable or easy, but made it work. It's extremely unique and magical in that way. And we're trying to figure out how to sort of carry that on and grow it, even though it's, I would say, more difficult today than it was back then. It's easier technically today, but it's way more crowded, and people just have so many more options for what to do every day in their lives that it's harder to cut through today.
I was thinking that a big competitor that you haven't kind of mentioned is phones, because back in the day, there weren't cell phones. There were, basically just mobile phones. And now, of course, people will spend hours. I was reading something today that people spend 3 hours a day playing Candy Crush, of all things.
Yeah. So I don't know if, maybe some of these things have made us dumber and we're willing to spend more time doing useless things like Candy Crush, my opinion. But, I think I'm hopeful that there's still the same number of people out there that want something more meaningful than that. But I think people have less tolerance today for investing their time to get what they want. So there's maybe that people's attention span or how much time they're willing to spend to get something of value has constantly been reduced, so that the expectation is I click on the button and I get what I want, and if I don't, I'm out. And that could be part of mobile, and just part of also that competition just has managed to create a lot of, whether it's direct competition or completely indirect competition, but just ultimately someone chooses to spend their time somewhere doing something. And there's a lot of easy ways to get satisfaction today. There's a lot of ways to satisfy yourself, whether it's for entertainment or economically or whatever. So it's just more crowded in that sense. But so we have to continue to push to try and make it easier and more understandable, and at the same time not dumb it down, because it's this incredible diversity that makes it interesting. but it's also what makes it complicated. And so that, I think that's a fascinating balancing act. That, we could make it a lot simpler. Minecraft is a lot simpler. The diversity is nowhere near what we have in Second Life. And the freedom expression is sort of constrained in sort of a interesting way, but that ease of use created, a ginormous, extremely popular product. So we're in that scale of complex freedom, create anything versus, no, you can only do these kinds of things, but it's a lot easier. Where on that spectrum do you want to be? And I think if we reduced what you can do in Second Life, which would make the product simpler, that would probably upset a lot of current residents, because part of that complexity is what makes it work for them. I think that's an interesting challenge. Like what things can be removed from Second Life, seem it less daunting and complicated, and still have it, work for people that depend on those things, but maybe that's a good trade-off. Make the product simpler, and it'll upset some existing users because they depend on some of those things, but maybe it makes the whole thing more approachable for the average user trying to get involved with. So, interesting problems to know.
I'm going to ask one very quick last question. How much have you seen of the birthday so far, and are you planning to go round it a bit?
I buzzed around the last couple of days. Went for a ride in some pods and looked at some of the art, and hopped in on some live music performance and danced around with some people. So yeah, I've enjoyed it. A bit here and there. My day is very, very sprinkled, so I don't get much time, but I did buzz around, and it's awesome to see so many green dots, and also just heard so many positive things from what we've done there together, and so I think it's just amazing. 16 years, and can't look for. I mean, I'm excited for the next 16, and just keep it going.
Me too. And I think that's a great note to finish on. So, I'll look out for the roller skating, Katie. That sounds like fun.
Oh, roller skating. I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah. You can get a hat. Yeah.
Thank you all. Thanks for your questions. Keep the questions coming. Keep being engaged. Keep pushing us to do better, and we'll keep pushing to make it better. And thank you all. Have a wonderful day, evening, night, wherever you are. And look forward to talking and seeing you all soon again.
Ebbe, thank you so much for joining me here today.
It's been a pleasure.
And
thank you, Saffia.
Patch, thank you too.